Hello. I want to thank you, first of all, for checking this out and spending this time with me, listening to what I have to say. So, I'm Jane, and I want to share something that has kind of come up recently, and it's very interesting, and so I just wanted to talk about it. So, um, there are lots of changes happening now, and as like the Vatican starts to crumble and stories of pedophilia come out, and more talk about like human trafficking and sex trafficking and children being taken advantage of, and these are topics that are not easy to talk about, and they're not easy to talk about to have in a space that has compassion. And I'm talking with people, and a lot of people are in this mindset of like, yeah, I'm accepting of people except for this kind of person. Except for the type of person that like does this one thing. And I have found a space of compassion for humans of all types. Because, I know that we're all reflections of each other. Like, I know we are. And every time I see a monster in someone, that's an aspect of me. Every time I see someone yelling at someone and hurting another human, that is an aspect of me. I have yelled at people. I've hurt people. I have been physically abusive. I've been emotionally abusive. I've probably been spiritually abusive in my past. And I have also been physically abused and emotionally abused and spiritually abused. And what came first, chicken or the egg? The abuse to me occurred first. And then, because I couldn't handle it, I became the abuser. So, I know that I had a choice, I guess, now in retrospect, that all the times that I had been neglected or hurt, my reaction could have been to lash out unto others and hit them and hurt them and all that stuff. I personally chose to do those things to myself. So my outlet in my pain that I was going through was to me. Whether I was cutting myself, burning myself, speaking really negatively to myself every time I looked in the mirror, every time I prayed, every single night when I went to bed, and every time I woke up to die. I told myself how ugly I was and how awful I was and how much I deserved all the pain and suffering that I was experiencing, that I deserved it. And that was my path. And there were times when I would lash out and just snap, and I would totally just blink, and I would just go off on someone and tell them how stupid they were and how awful they were and how ugly they were and how worthless they were. Because those were the way as I was feeling about myself. And once I couldn't handle it, I had stuffed it in so much. And then once I got too full of that, it had to come out. And it was never met with compassion. It was never met with kind eyes that were like, oh my God, you were a hurt child in an adult body. Or you were a hurt little child in a teenage body. That wasn't the response I got. The response I got was, you're a bitch. You're mean. You suck. And things of that nature. And I can only imagine what it would have been like if someone would have just hugged me and said, oh, sweetie, you're hurting. Let's talk about this. It's okay. You didn't deserve what you received when you were really little. And I see that now. I feel like we can, we get these pains and these hurts when we're littles, and we stuff it in, and then we explode it out because we don't know how to deal with it, because it's not been conditioned or taught how to have compassion while someone's lashing out, unless they've been labeled as something. You know, if you label someone as something, then it's like they're okay. Like, it gives it a reason, an excuse. Well, if we're not labeled as having a disablement, you know, pick a thing. If we're not labeled as something, then it's just, we're just regular human, even though we're all on the spectrum, let's be honest. Anyway, and some, yeah, so we express it out. And so I feel like we're going to start to witness a lot more of the expressions of the pained child. And I'm calling them monsters, and I mean that so lovingly. These aspects of monster within us. That part of us that just lashes out, shows our teeth, like, I'm the monster of pain. I'm the monster of abuse. I'm the product of the fear that I have inside, and the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment and the unworthiness. And I'm going to lash that out. And those are the monsters within all of us. We've all been hurt. To the extent of our hurt is the size of our monster that we can let out. The amount of compassion that we have heals that monster. So the bigger the monster, the more space we have to have compassion. And as more like disclosures happen, and we find out more about kind of really messed up ways that people have expressed their childhood pains and what they thought was right and admirable, and how they were supposed to express their childhood hurts, maybe, but maybe by taking it out on others, a weaker being. You know, sometimes people will, like, abuse animals. It's like all the abuse that they got, they don't know how to deal with. They hurt the animal because the animal can't stop them. And it's a way for them to, like, feed the monster and, like, let the monster out of the cage to get the exercise, and then can be put back in the cage and can be like normal human. And then monster reacts out of the cage and put the monster back in the cage. And no point, that's not, like, no point is that shifting the monster to be human. And as more information comes out, you know, I just want to share with everyone how I find compassion for maybe what is going to be revealed in behaviors from people that we have maybe looked up to. So when I was 14, I was introduced to the pedophile world in a way that I didn't necessarily agree to. And that continued for, well, until I was 18. And then I guess it wasn't technically pedophilia. And these men were definitely, you know, bigger, stronger, and authoritative, and I was supposed to be kind, and all of those things that I had been taught. And now I see them as little boys that were hurt. Little boys that were taught to hold it in, hold the emotions in, and rewarded for, like, sexual acts. Not knowing that I was a part of their expression of their pain. So I have found compassion for these men. And I know that women can be in this world too. I'm just talking about my experience. But, like, dudes have been conditioned in a lot of ways that, especially in certain religiosities, to take out their pain and suffering on those weaker. And for me to find compassion for those people and to heal that monster in them personally sits more easily in my heart than me holding on to anger at what these people did to me or what I got to experience in my life. So I feel like this is the how to put into practice, the, like, up-leveled human experience, the enlightened experience. Yeah, we're still here, you know, like, we still hear about this stuff and we still experience this stuff and we still have to deal with this stuff. Well, you know, we're supposed to be, like, enlightened and aligned, and, well, how to when all this stuff is going on. so I can just share my ways and my perspective. And for me personally, it's finding compassion for the hurt little kids that were like little kids that were really hurt, and them growing up and expressing their hurt at me. Like, if I could go back and see these kids just as little kids and hold them and say, hey, you're going to do something in 20, 30 years that's really going to hurt me because of what you just experienced as this little baby being, this little love nugget. And I'm sorry that you're going to do this to me. And I'm going to take one for the team because I'm going to love you now as your little self. And have compassion for the little that you were and the pain that you went through. Because that, to me, personally, is the only way to heal people that are hurting and that hurt others, that express their pains outwardly when they can no longer hurt themselves. And then they just hurt others. So, I wanted to share my perspective on having compassion for the monsters within ourselves and having compassion for the monsters that we get to witness in others, and being able to hold them in the light that they were born into, that they are embodied as, whether they express it or not, whether they feel safe enough to express it, whether they've ever expressed it or not. And I feel like by me looking at them with that lens and that perspective, that may be the only time in their entire life that someone actually looked at them as just like a human being that is doing the best they can, and they're really hurting a lot of people in themselves, and just seeing them before maybe they got hurt and or tortured and or abused, repressed, bound, and seeing them as the free, joyful light that they came into being as. And it allows me to continue going through this like shift and holding myself in the light that I know I am. So I wanted to share that. So I wanted to hop on here and share that. So yeah, I think that's really all I wanted to say. And I hope that everyone can find it in their hearts to have compassion for a lot of the suffering and a lot of the sufferers and a lot of the ones that are causing the suffering. Because in my opinion, but you can take it or leave it, that is the only way to start to make a shift in the human behavior, is being the compassionate ones, being in light, and working from the heart and not from the lower sacral space of judgment and righting and wronging and punishing. So take it or leave it. I just wanted to share it. So I appreciate you checking this out and taking the time, and I appreciate any support that you may pay forward. I have links below that you can click on and support me in any way that you are called to. I appreciate it. So I hope that your day is marvelous and that you find compassion for your monsters. Find it in your heart. Have a lovely day.